guys hear me? Yeah? Okay, great. It's working. Okay, so the summer before I began my degree in library science, libraries were being rediscovered as cool. NPR's pop culture desk published a story saying that libraries were the new cupcakes, which is to say they were having a popularity moment. No longer the staid repositories of books, libraries were full of hip people who made Lady Gaga parody videos, had tattoos, and banded together against the Patriot Act. I thought of librarians as unabashedly nerdy ushers, eager to guide their patrons' pathways to information, and I was really excited to join their ranks. I cut my librarian teeth on Nantucket, an island 30 miles off the coast of Cape Cod. There, I deciphered ship captains' letters from the 1900s. I helped patrons with genealogy research, and I researched the abolitionist Quakers who brought Frederick Douglass to speak for the first time in mixed company. Still, I missed the valleys, trees, and the mountains here, and I knew I would always come back to Western Massachusetts. And the first job I saw was in Springfield, and I interviewed at the Mason Square branch. The branch hummed with activity in a way that I hadn't seen in other libraries, and it was bright. There, for the hiring committee, I did a presentation on seed libraries, which allow patrons to check out vegetable, herb, and flower seeds so they can plant them at home. After I finished my presentation, my manager smiled a little bit. She pointed outside to the reading garden, a little grassy area where people eat lunch or read a book. There, in a neat row, were 9 raised garden beds. Built, she explained, so that kids could learn about vegetable gardening in the summertime. I felt like I was meant to be there. Now, the Mason Square neighborhood lies at the intersection of 4 of Springfield's smaller neighborhoods: Bay, McKnight, Old Hill, and Upper Hill. The area is incredibly diverse and has a really rich social justice-oriented history. A lot of Springfield's Black political leaders got their start as community organizers in the square in the 1960s, fighting for civil rights and against the police brutality in the city. Battles for food access, housing, and criminal justice reform soon followed and are still fought for today. Whereas on Nantucket, my patrons engaged with history and its artifacts in a way that was really divorced from their present realities. My patrons in Springfield, the way that they engaged with history was still relevant to their present lives. Working at the reference desk, my patrons asked me a menagerie of questions on different topics. They wanted to know how to contact their cousin through Facebook. They wanted to know how to print out pictures of gazelles for their kids' school project. They wanted to know how to fight an eviction letter, how to, print things. And, it was while I was there, I was realizing that libraries are responsible for filling the needs of their patrons, whatever they are, and that in communities across the country, they are doing just that in innovative and oftentimes unexpected ways. In San Francisco, the homeless can access free hot showers at the main library through a repurposed school bus. In Washington, D.C., patrons can access free legal services and equipment that will digitize their home videos. In Newton, Massachusetts, librarians have partnered with volunteers to record the oral histories of the community's elders. And immigrants can learn English and study for the citizenship test in the basement of the Jones Library in Amherst. Many libraries also have 3D printers and maker spaces, and some have libraries of things, which allow people to borrow items from the library that they can't afford themselves or wouldn't want to purchase. My branch currently circulates binoculars, xylophones, drums, and we're getting a microscope really soon. I'm really excited now. Springfield librarians teach workshops on how to determine whether or not a story is fake news. Job seekers can attend workshops where after finishing they can get a free voucher for a suit or an interview outfit. My colleague and I are currently working on a community health needs assessment so that we can show the need of a social worker in the Springfield libraries. And of course, we still have story time. But libraries are filling the gaps in their communities, whatever they are. This is the future of libraries, a place where we provide programming and events and support for the needs and ambitions of the community. Now, we're also a place where the library is also a place where people can socialize. A lot of my patrons are seniors and live alone. You know, the library is where they come to chit-chat, where they come to hang out with other regulars and connect with their families using computers. I have one regular, Warren. He's in his mid-80s and he comes every single day. He stops by my desk to chat about the news, to use the computer. His eyes are really bad, so when he can't see the keyboard keys, I type in web addresses in for him. He's kind of gruff, but he shows his gratitude by periodically bringing me small tokens of appreciation. Pens, pencils, apples, and recently a snow globe that says Las Vegas, which has a very prominent place on my desk. We also get a lot of job seekers, but what people oftentimes want more than help on an application is for someone to listen to them talk about how crummy it is to go to a job interview and then not get the job. Someone to cheer them on while they go through yet another multi-page online application, and someone to give them a heads up when, you know, the hospital is hiring, or the casino, or Mass Mutual. One of the things I've been focused on the most for the last few years is food access. Mason Square suffers from poverty and hunger. It's a food desert. Ibrahim Ali, who works for the nonprofit Gardening the Community, describes these deserts as food swamps, areas where there's plenty of fast food restaurants and convenience stores, but where few, if any, businesses sell fresh produce that's rich in nutrients. It was Gardening the Community that built the raised beds that are in the library's reading garden, and each summer they host a 6-week camp program where children can learn about growing, identifying, and harvesting fresh vegetables. Now, on the days that the camp doesn't meet, it's up to the library staff to take care of the garden. My first summer in Mason Square, I didn't know anything about vegetable gardening. I honestly thought that you were supposed to use scissors to harvest kale. Luckily, I threw myself into this new task, and I spent that first summer staking tomatoes and making sure the basil didn't go to seed. And a lot of really fantastic older women gave me really even more fantastic gardening advice. They would tell me stories of gardens they once had, or that their grandmothers once had. Stories of summers spent by their grandmother's skirts pulling weeds and harvesting green beans. Other folks stopped by too. A homeless man taught me how to trim tomato plants for the best yields. Shy teenagers would ask me what the vegetables were, but they would never ever eat any of it. Children wanted to know which of the cherry tomatoes were ripe, wanted to help water. It was a surprise to me and many of my library patrons that broccoli grows out of the ground like that with the leaves. But that summer I learned a lot, not only about gardening, but also about the needs of the community. A lot of the older women who gave me gardening advice had also been community gardeners, but who lost their garden when the house supplying their water supply was sold. So they missed gardening and came to me and asked if we could figure out a partnership through the library. So for the last 4 years, I've been working with those gardeners, with community organizers, with people from the city, and healthcare professionals to transform a vacant lot that's adjacent to the library into a community garden and park space where people have free access to garden plots. Together we grow vegetables and we teach each other about gardening through workshops like composting, seed starting. We also host ongoing health literacy and nutrition programs as well. Then we built a series of raised beds on what used to be the driveway of the lot. And over the last 3 years, 10 community members have gardened there. The local mosque right next door has a bed, and so does a mentoring group that works with local children. Now, in this part of New England, the gardening season doesn't really kick off until the end of May when the ground has thawed. But the community gardeners and I, we get started in March. Shaking the snow from their boots, the gardeners come in. They're all matriarchs. Many of them are church-going ladies. Some are were community organizers or retired educators. One lady was certified in master gardening in her late 70s, which I find to be like completely impressive. And one woman is the community garden coordinator for the Springfield Food Policy Council. So together we gather in armchairs, and the first order of business is passing around seed catalogs, which we hand off with the same reverence that you might pass along a sacred text. We ooh and we ah, and we talk about what we're going to grow this year. Which variety of okra, what kind of heirloom tomatoes. And then we get down to business, planning business. Almost all of the community gardeners are older women of color. And they've explained to me that for many in the Black community, gardening harkens back to slavery or to sharecropping and has a negative connotation. Or it's just seen as something that white people do. But they've explained to me that for themselves, they have moved away from that perspective and reframed gardening as an empowering way to become more self-sufficient. For them, gardening is extremely important, but what's even more important is that they can create a community of educators where they can explain how beneficial gardening can be, but also support people who are interested in gardening but haven't started yet. The first program we host each year is the Gardeners Get Together. It's in April, it's a potluck, and everyone's invited, whether or not they garden. We all get together and talk about our successes and failures from the previous growing season. And people do workshops. Maria, one of my favorite gardeners, started off as a complete beginner, but through her dedication, she has learned so much and recently did a workshop on tomato pruning. A few weeks later, once the seeds we started are about hand height, all the gardeners get together in the community garden with trowels and buckets in tow. It's the only day of the year where the kids from the mentoring group are allowed to get really, really dirty. We fill all of the boxes with compost and plant our seeds, and then, in the middle of the summer, assuming that the crows haven't pecked our starts, that the trifling squirrels haven't gotten our cucumbers, the garden generally yields more vegetables than the community gardeners can eat themselves. A lot of the extra veggies go to the food pantry, but any leftover after that, I bring inside to the library. After scrubbing off the dirt, I put the vegetables out on the circulation desk so that people can grab some kale or a cucumber as they're checking out their Tina Turner CDs. This is a great opportunity for a number of patrons to gush about a new recipe they heard about to the library's circulation clerks, who are themselves known to go on about cooking. For some, it's just an opportunity to grab some fresh veggies that they may not otherwise have tried. Now, 3 years after I gave my presentation to the hiring committee on seed lending libraries, I finally got to start my own. I found a great partner in High Mowing Organic Seeds, a company out of Vermont. Each summer, fall, they give me 400 packets of herb, vegetable, and flower seeds. I put them out in these clear display cases that are meant for brochures. And as soon as I put them out in April, my patrons make a beeline for them. Like the serious gardeners are like, make a beeline straight for those sunflower seeds before anyone else can get them. What's cool is that in addition to seed libraries, many libraries across the country are also starting tool lending libraries, which allow people to borrow wheelbarrows, aerators, hedge trimmers, and any other manner of tool, which saves people hundreds of dollars. So recently, the Springfield Library, we got a tool shed through grant funding, and that's where our community gardeners can store their tools. In the last year or so, we've also started giving out first-time gardener kits, which consist simply of a pot, some soil, a trowel, and some herb seeds or flower seeds. We give them out at programs, but also to the reluctant gardeners who come in and they eye the seeds. They might like pick it up and then put it back down. They're free, I say. I'm not a gardener, they say. For a lot of adults, they can't be convinced to take seeds home with them. But children very rarely have such doubts. They believe that they can and they will grow watermelons and pumpkins. One family took a first-time gardening kit home with them after a workshop on pollinators, where they learned how bees and butterflies help with the garden. A couple of weeks later, they burst into the library. "Miss," they said, "we grew flowers." They told me very excitedly and very, very quickly all about how they had grown on the windowsill of their kitchen, no less, polka dot bachelor buttons, which are the most friendly purple, pink, and blue flowers that you can imagine. Now, not all of the seeds that we lend out from our seed lending library will see the ground this year. Some of them never will, but that doesn't mean that something hasn't grown. Seeds are an endless possibility. And what I want more than anything is for people to see libraries as a place where you can grow. Libraries can provide people with what they need, whatever that is. A place to find community, compassion, and hope.